All right, so what I want to do in this video is talk about some prospects that I personally have my eyes on and I think are interesting guys to watch. That doesn't mean that this list won't expand or that some guys might fall off of this list at the specific round that I have them listed under, or that some guys could climb up this list. This is just where I'm at right now, and some guys that I think with the last week of college football coming up and rolling into the college football playoff, rolling into the college football postseason, whether it be conference championship games, whether it be regular bowl games, I think are worthy of keeping an eye on, especially if you're a Browns fan, because these guys do some things that I think Browns fans will find interesting. All right, let's start with first round guys. Will Campbell out of LSU is a really intriguing prospect, a hell of a run blocker coming out of college, somebody who the Browns really need, right? They don't have a road grader. Now, he plays tackle right now at LSU. A lot of people project him to be a guard. And the issue for him coming to Cleveland, having immediate day one impact is right now, there's not an immediate spot open for him at guard, right? Joe Batonio is the closest thing that you have to a questionable. He might retire, he might not. If he does choose to retire, then there is an open spot. And I think that to go to the winner of the Will Campbell, Zach Zenter competition. And he would have a chance there. But Will Campbell, road grader, run block extraordinaire, somebody to keep in mind for. Kelvin Banks out of Texas is the one shot in the early first round, at least, to get a tackle. I think he's also somebody that people feel more comfortable pegging at guard, but he can play tackle. He has the length and athleticism to play tackle. And I think that that might be something interesting for the Cleveland Browns to look at. We know that the interior offensive line, the offensive line in general, is going to be one of the biggest needs for this team this offseason. So you got to look at those two guys to start. Let's go into the next group of players. These are two edge players that I think you should have your eyes on. Now, edge is most certainly not a need for the Cleveland Browns, but there are a couple of players here, one more than the other, that I find interesting enough that the Browns would be excited about. Abdul Carter out of Penn State. Look, it's easy to watch him and think that he's Micah Parsons, but he's not Micah Parsons. But what he is a really good football player. This is somebody who can play edge. This is somebody who stands up and plays linebacker in Penn State. And he can certainly do a lot of the 9T, wide nine stuff that the Browns like to do. Think of him as a juiced up version of what Obo Okoronkwo brings to this team and filling that same role. I also think having somebody like Abdul Carter, who is such a dynamic pass rushing threat, he could come from both sides, the outside, sometimes the interior, and wide nine, and also somebody who can come from the linebacker position. You pair that up with somebody like JOK, you have Mahmoud Diabite. I think you have a nice pair to create a lot of different pass rushes, and for Jim Schwartz to get a little bit more exotic. I know he wants to do more sim pressure, and somebody like Abdul Carter would be somebody who is a blessing for a defensive coordinator who wants to do sim pressure, given his versatility on where you could put him on the field. Makes him not an obvious threat to back up in coverage or rush. And he's somebody who has showed and demonstrated the ability to get back out there and be in coverage as well. The next edge rusher is Mykel Williams from Georgia. This is a guy I like considerably less than Abdul Carter. Like, I think this would make more sense if you trade it back into the first round or something like that. Good athlete. The production's not there like it is for Abdul Carter for Mykel Williams, but you can see the same vision for Mykel Williams there at Georgia. Long, lanky guy, so there's room for him to bulk up and become a great run defender as well with all that length and strength that he's demonstrated. He will be more of a traditional edge, not 4-eye, but he would be more of a traditional edge, lining up at like, a 4 spot instead of at like a wide 9 or something like that. But you could use him as a wide 9 guy early in his career. I think those two edge rushers, somebody to watch. So if you're watching a Penn State game, you're watching a Georgia game, keep an eye on those two. Will Johnson, the defensive back out of Michigan, if you haven't caught a good glimpse of him, you can catch a good glimpse of him this week when he plays Ohio State. I think it's going to be a good test for him. Really good corner. Travis Hunter, if you haven't watched him, go watch him. He's been spectacular at both sides of the ball. Same thing with Shador Sanders. And then Ashton Jeanty. Go out of your way to watch Ashton Jeanty run the football. There's a reason why people are talking about him being the highest drafted running back in quite some time. He is spectacular. If a Boise State game is on TV, which, hey, they're probably going to make the playoffs if they win out here. If a Boise State game is on TV, make sure you watch it. Make sure you go see what Ashton Jeanty has been doing, because he has been doing a lot there. And then if you're looking at wide receivers, Tetor McMillan, he's the number one receiver in this class. He is a pretty dynamic wide receiver. Luther Burden out of Mizzou. He's the wide receiver. There's like a wide receiver every class where you're like, he's not super tall. He's not the biggest guy. He doesn't have all the tools, but he's just really good at football. That's what Luther Burden is. He's just a damn good football player. He's going to go in the first round. And Isaiah Bond is a spectacular athlete at the wide receiver position. Played at Alabama, now plays at Texas. Those are my first round guys that I think you should watch as the college football season kind of winds down before we get into evaluation season. All right, second round guys. This is where more quarterbacks get involved. I only have two here, Jalen Milroe and Carson Beck. Now, this doesn't mean that if they're there in the second round, I'm running to the podium and taking them. I just think there's something to consider there with both of these guys. With Jalen Milroe, with Carson Beck, you would be drafting these guys understanding that they're coming off of bad years for college football quarterbacks. So you would be drafting them not based off of their production, their win-loss record this year, but more so based on what you feel like their potential is. The reason I don't mind taking a flyer on Carson Beck, a lot of people had this guy as the number one quarterback in the draft class coming into the season. And because Georgia did not have the year people expected, his draft class rank has kind of fallen significantly. But I think some of that could just be the fact that Georgia's not as talented as they had been last year. And maybe it's kind of unfairly tanking Carson Beck's stats. I mean, not stats, but unfairly tanking Carson Beck's status as a prospect. I've seen people go as low as the fourth round on him. Jalen Milroe is a different story, right? He has had some bad performances this year. He's had some spectacular performances this year. He's been very up and down. I think he's a player who should probably return to college at this point. But the tools with Jalen Milroe are all there. Unbelievable build, unbelievable athleticism. I think if you get his mechanics right, he could have unbelievable arm strength as well. But he's a project, like capital P project. You can't draft Jalen Milroe thinking you're going to start him in 2 games. That is a capital P project, at least a year, right? Got to treat it like Jordan Love. I think under the right tutelage, I believe in the person enough that he could become somebody in the NFL, but you really got to have a plan for Jalen Milroe. You can't stray from that plan if you're going to take him. Similar thing with Carson Beck, right? Running backs here galore. Quinshawn Junkins, you got the running back out of Kansas as well you could throw on this list. Omarion Hampton, he's a big bruising running back. Caleb Johnson from Iowa. Ollie Gordon from Oklahoma State. Take your pick, man. Look, the Browns got to draft a running back this year. It really has nothing to do with how you feel about Nick Chubb. It's just, there's just so many in this draft class. You got to take one if you're the Cleveland Browns, and I don't think there's a problem with taking one if you're the Cleveland Browns. Let's jump in to the next position group, which is wide receiver. I got 2 guys here I think are interesting. One guy you guys are going to be familiar with in Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State. Another guy, Elik Manor from Stanford. Now, you might know him because he's the guy who put 300 on Travis Hunter last year in Colorado. He's really good, a good playmaker, good size, good strength on him, makes a ton of 20-plus yard plays. Somebody to definitely watch, especially in the second round. He kind of has a little A.J. Brown to him, like on my first glance of him. Not saying he's going to be A.J. Brown, but he has a little bit of that to him. Jalen Walker, kind of a similar argument, but on a lesser level to the one I made for Abdul Carter. He's not the player that Abdul Carter is, and he doesn't have the size that Abdul has. He's probably somebody who edge rushes on occasion, but fully plays a linebacker position. My issue with him, Georgia linebackers are usually very strong. This was not a great year for Georgia linebackers. Do you really want to draft the prospect that was the dude who wasn't the good linebacker at Georgia? JT Tuamalo, I'm sorry I mispronounced that name. Fantastic edge product. He's just fun to watch, moves around a lot. Again, a guy you can move around and do a lot with some pressure with. And look, I know that it would be overkill, but I don't mind the idea of, like, if the really good edge players available for the Browns, you deciding to load up on edge and overwhelming teams with your pass rushing ability and leaning on your strength for the next few years. I mean, I think a JT would definitely be a strength pick there. DB Siobhan Revel, he got injured earlier this year out of East Carolina. Fantastic corner. He's going to be the real deal. You're not going to be able to watch him because he's not going to play for the rest of the year, but he will show up in the Senior Bowl circuit, potentially, definitely in the Combine circuit because he should be healthy by then. All right, third round guys, and I'm really just going to name guys that I like. I don't really have an in-depth list of third rounders. Cade Klubnik, if he does declare for this year, I think the third round's a great spot to take him. Maybe even think about trading up into the second round for him. He does a lot of the stuff that the Kevin Stefanski offense requires. He's really smart with the football, knows how to navigate the pocket, throws the ball very well. Former 5-star recruit, so you know the pedigree is good with him too. And then Drew Allure, I know it's Aller, but I call him Allure because it's fun. But Drew Allure from Penn State, big guy, all the potential to throw that ball downfield that you want there. The decision-making has been questionable at times. The consistency has been questionable at times. He's a super young prospect, but also he is from Ohio, so I think there would be some added support if he went that way. Harold Fana Jr., I'm going to make the push for him to get drafted by the Cleveland Browns. I would love if the Bowling Green product, the tight end, really dynamic player out of Bowling Green, could get drafted to Cleveland. And then I got some quarterbacks that I have listed as day 3 only. Curtis Rourke did not do himself any favors versus the Ohio State Buckeyes, but, you know, day 3 or later, I don't mind it. Garrett Nussmeier, again, he's had a couple bad games. Day 3 or later, I don't mind it. Jackson Dart, day 3 or later, I don't mind it. And Quinn Ewers, day 3 or later, I don't mind it. If you go any earlier than that, then I have concerns about the upside of those picks. That's my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.